Welcome everyone and happy Wednesday. I will give it a minute to give attendees an opportunity to join. All right, so let's get started. Hello, I'm Melissa and I'm a construction success manager here at Fieldwire. I'd like to thank you for joining us today for our live webinar on Fieldwire for quality inspections. To kick things off, just some housekeeping announcements. A reminder that this webinar will be recorded. A copy of the recording along with the slide deck will be emailed to you at the conclusion of the session. And to keep things on track, attendees will be muted throughout the session. You may input your comments in the chat and questions in the Q&A pane. We will try to get our best to get all of your questions during the session and at the end of the presentations during the Q&A. For any questions that we don't address during the session, we will have one of our experts reach out to you directly. With that, I'd like to introduce you to our speaker and construction expert, Dylan Reed, Construction Success Manager here at Fieldwire. Before joining the team here at Fieldwire, Dylan spent 3 years out of college working as a project engineer and APM for a large plumbing and mechanical subcontractor in the Bay Area. He worked on a wide variety of projects with a focus on medical and office buildings. Now here at Fieldwire, he has helped companies implement creative solutions and optimize their workflows and help them save time and money. But yeah, Dylan, the stage is all yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa. Yeah, so quick agenda for today. Just want to give a brief overview on Fieldwire and kind of why it was built. And then we'll dive into a demonstration. And then after that, we'll have about 5 minutes for Q&A portion. And then we'll provide some Fieldwire resources that you guys can reach out to after the webinar. So yeah, with that in mind, so Fieldwire was kind of built with the idea of connecting the field and office and streamlining that communication and just kind of making things easier between the field and the office and just improving the way that that works. The first one was kind of being able to access all the information that you need to build and complete your jobs. And this includes construction documents from plans to submittals that are all stored electronically and are accessible both on and offline. The second part of that is just the planning and managing work aspect. And that involves just ensuring your team in the office and your team in the field both know what they need to complete and can communicate quickly with others. And our Fieldwire task module was actually built with that in mind and kind of aimed at eliminating inefficient emails and phone calls and having one source of truth when it comes to communication on a job site. And then the last one is just having live updates and reports from what's going on at the point of install. And this allows you to keep your internal and external team members up to date on what's going on the project at any point in time. So why use Fieldwire for QA/QC? So Fieldwire was definitely built for the field in mind, and it's a super easy tool to use for QA/QC. Some of those kind of key aspects of that is it's easy to plan and manage your work within Fieldwire. We have a great punch list tool and an automated reporting tool as well. Our mobile plan viewing is great for tracking actual like punch list or QA/QC items and knowing the exact location that those are where they are. And then being able to progress or document your progress photos and have a way of instantly communicating with your team members on and off site. So with that, we'll dive into a live demo here. So I'll be kind of running through a couple of different workflows, both from the GC perspective as well as more of a sub perspective. And we'll kind of go over the more reactive side of things with just creating like a punch list item. And then after that, we'll dive into more of the proactive side of things and planning out your QA/QC workflow, and just having like a more standardized process that you kind of go through. So a couple of things I want to touch on before we kind of dive into the actual completion of work is just getting your project set up so you can actually do QA/QC. So the first thing is our task statuses at the top here. So in this example, we kind of have a standard workflow for a project, with QA/QC and punch being its own status. So we have active, planned, delayed, QA/QC punch, and then complete and verified. The benefit of having it this way is you can kind of have your entire project, or all the work that needs to be completed on a project within one project in Fieldwire, as opposed to kind of doing a dedicated QA/QC project in itself, which is definitely possible, but this is a good way that I've seen quite a few different GCs use it for. The other benefit of having a QA/QC punch dedicated status here is that color, when we look like at a plan sheet, especially in the field, you'll always know based on the color purple that you're looking at a QA/QC or punch item. So I can kind of show you real quick what that looks like. So without having to click into anything, I automatically know that all these purple items are QA/QC related. And it just makes it easier for the guys in the field or just anybody viewing plans to know what they're looking at without having to click into it. So that's kind of the first step that you want to get set up, is just customizing those statuses. And these are fully customizable. You can have up to 7. But that's one key part. And then the other one is setting up your categories. So on the left-hand side here, because we're kind of viewing this as a GC, we have this broken up as like different sub trades. This can also be done if like you're a subcontractor, which I'll cover in a bit. You can do this by different systems or by devices or equipment. It's basically just a way of being able to kind of further sort what you're looking at. So if I was to, like in this case, we also created the QA/QC category. And if I were to click on that, I could further sort within this Kanban view of what I'm looking at here. And the benefit of having this QA/QC category, like a dedicated category for that, is that I also have this 2-digit identifier right here. So that's beneficial when I'm looking at the tasks here, but it's super helpful again when I'm looking at that plan view, and I can see without having to click in that that's a QA item. So again, really helpful for the guys in the field to know what they're looking at without having to make too many clicks. So yeah, once those are kind of set up, you can get going with that QA/punch portion of your project. And to start, I'm just going to give you a run through on doing like a punch list item. So this will be more of the reactive side of things, just to kind of give you an idea of what a task will look like. So I'm in that project now. I'm on my iPad. If I go ahead and click on a plan sheet here, I can click on this toolbar on the right. So let's say I'm walking the site as maybe a PE or PM for the GC. I can create a pin based on if there's like a deficiency that I see. So I just click on that, and then I go to a specific location where I see that that deficiency. And then this will queue up a task attribute window here, and then I can fill out this information. So I'll give it a title, maybe use the talk to text here on the bottom left to create that. Missing stub out. And then I can go ahead and change this to QA/QC punch. And then I can change the category to plumbing. And then I'll go ahead and assign this to the foreman on site. And then I have my plan associated with it. And then I have a start date. So I'll just go ahead and change this to today. And I want to make sure this is completed by Friday. And that kind of covers most of the things we want to include within the attributes. I might also add a tag here. So because it's related to punch, I'll just add the punch tag. And then that kind of wraps up most of the content that we want to include within that. I might also want to add a quick snapshot of the issue, as well as some text kind of clarifying or adding some more context. So I could say, at Tony, please complete ASAP, period. Inspection scheduled for early next week, period. And then he'll get a notification kind of explaining that issue and give him a little bit more context on what's going on there. And then he can go ahead and complete that work. So that kind of gives you an idea of the way that tasks work. And also if I was using this in a more like reactive way for punch list. But let's say we're kind of running into a lot of these issues on this project and we're realizing we want to take a more kind of proactive approach and plan this out a little bit more so we're not hitting these scheduled deadlines and kind of missing these inspection dates. And so we want to create kind of inspection or a standardized process going forward for each room. So to do that, I'm going to hop into the web version here. So basically what we want to do is use our task importer to upload tasks for all the different rooms on the project to create kind of a standardized QA/QC process for each one. So to do that, we'll just go ahead and use this. Click on the import task button here, and then this is going to queue up a window that kind of gives us some information that we can fill out. So you can either fill this out within this window in Fieldwire, or you could also create your own separate spreadsheet and then copy and paste that information into Fieldwire. So I'll just kind of run through some of the key things here. So what we want to include, we're going to do this for a room by room basis and create kind of a standard process here. So we'll call it by each room, we'll give the room number in there and the room name, and then call it QA/QC at the end there. And then we'll also have the status be QA/QC punch. Those are all going to go within that. And then our category is going to be QA/QC. And then and again, the benefit of having a dedicated category to QA/QC is you'll always be able to see that QA tag whenever you're looking at the plans for each item. And then our assignee is just going to be whoever we want to assign that to. And then our start and end dates. So those are going to be pretty important. If you can pull these from your master schedule, it's going to make it a lot easier for kind of planning this QA work. And then you can input those dates and then plan accordingly and make sure that those are getting taken care of prior to whatever your deadline is or whatever your inspection date is. Next, we'll have the plan that it's going to be associated with, as well as X and Y coordinates, which are totally optional. I have them in here, but you can also just put the plan sheet in and then drag and drop to the specific location that you want them. And then over here on the last two things that are pretty important are related task name. So all of these are individual rooms that we're creating tasks for, excuse me. And then at the bottom here, we also have an overarching task, which is going to be for that entire, these are all within building 2. And so this is the full building 2 sign off. And this will allow us to kind of track the progress, like once we pull up that building 2 task to see which tasks are completed and what still need to be completed. And I'll kind of show you what that looks like in a second here. And then our checklist here on the right, that's going to be a checklist that's already been created within Fieldwire. So our pre-punch list. And then when I put this in here, it's going to automatically pull that in for each task. So this creates a standard process that you can follow for each task and check off items as you go. And I'll again show you what that looks like in a moment here. So what you would do here is if you built this out in a separate spreadsheet, you just copy that and then paste that over here. And then that's going to all populate in there. And then if anything was not aligned with what you'd set up in the project, like the category, then it would pop up in red and just let you know that you'd have to change that. But all this looks good. So we would just go ahead and hit import tasks. In my case, I've already uploaded these, so I'll just skip that step and close out of there. And then you can see, and I'll kind of show you on the plan sheet here what that looks like. But we have in this QA/QC portion, all of these different rooms included underneath here. And so if I go to our plans here, I can see the rainbow wheel. On the plan that I have a dedicated QA/QC task associated with each room. So now I'm going to go ahead, we'll kind of go through the process for just completing some of these. So I'm going to jump back onto my iPad because likely that's where you'll be doing this, is in the field. And I'll go ahead and click into this plan sheet here. And I can see all of these, and I can go ahead and click and complete one of them if I just pull it up. But the other useful tool I can do here is if I click on our task tab up here, and then I actually already have it filtered by QA/QC. But if I went from all tasks and then I filtered down to QA/QC, that's going to give me kind of a more filtered view. And if I also kind of, since I have those dates in there, I can also sort this and attack those kind of QA/QC or QA/QC those different rooms based on the due dates that we have. So if I click these up and down arrows up here, I can sort by the end date. And then it's going to show me these tasks up top here that are due by July 20th. So I can kind of focus on those first and complete them accordingly. So if I go ahead and click on one of these, it's going to pull up this task, and then I have kind of all of these different items that I can go through and complete. So while I'm doing this, I can just click each one as I see it completed. That looks good, all the walls look good. And then let's say I run into an issue with the flooring and that hasn't been completed. So what I can do is just double click that, show that it hasn't been completed. And then I want to notify the flooring sub that they have a deficiency, and I want them to go ahead, or notify them to go ahead and complete that work. So to do that, I would just hit this plus sign at the bottom and create a related task. And the benefit of this is that by doing a related task, I'm not changing who's assigned this actual QA/QC task. So I'll create a related task here. I'll create one, and then I'll just fill out this information kind of like we did before. So flooring incomplete, and then I'll change the status to delayed, and then I'll change that category to flooring, and then I can change the assignee to the flooring foreman on site, and then I'll go ahead and associate this with that plan, and then start and end date, we'll go ahead and sign that as well and make sure this is completed ASAP. And that all looks pretty good. And then I'll do the similar thing, just add some context there, and then give him a little message saying, need to finish glazing, period, inspection scheduled for Friday, period. And then John will get a notification with that information, letting him know that he has to go ahead and complete that. So if I hit done, now looking at this task, I can see this QA/QC task that, we completed the first 4 items, but then we ran into an issue with the flooring. So that hasn't been completed. And then we have that related task saying that the flooring is incomplete. And so you kind of have a fully documented view of what's going on with that. And you can check in on that, make sure it's being done. We'll take a look at it on Friday, make sure that that's been completed. And yeah, that kind of covers that. And real quick, I just want to show you, so that building 2 QA/QC sign off, that's the overarching task. So if I click on that, that's going to show all those related rooms to that. And so we have these 4 down here that are completed, and then we have all these other ones above it that are incomplete. And it just gives you a quick overview on where you guys stand for that building 2 QA/QC sign off and what still needs to be done. So I'll go ahead and exit out of that now. And then we're going to jump into what this kind of looks like for a subcontractor. So I'm going to flip over into a different project here. And this is a little bit more focused on, but this is focused on like the mechanical side of things. But I'll kind of just run through a couple things here. So at the top, we have a similar workflow for our statuses, but a couple of things that are a little bit different. One thing is we have this constraint status now, and this constraint one is going to be for issues that we run into that are for subcontractors that are outside of Fieldwire. So being a mechanical sub, we likely won't have the plumbing or the electrical or flooring subs that are not obviously working underneath us on Fieldwire. And so this is going to create a way for us to kind of notify either them or the GC that they're holding us up in some way. And I'll kind of show you what that looks like in a second here. But similarly, we have our QA/QC punch dedicated status here. And then we just have open and in progress statuses. And then down here on the left here, we have our categories. And these are broken up into systems and kind of devices and equipment. So a little bit different than the GC side of things. This just makes a little bit more sense for subs. Again, these categories can be configured however makes sense for you, but just want to kind of show you what that can look like. And yeah, we'll kind of dive into a QA/QC item for, let's say, a VAV here. Whoa. Man. So similar process that we have set up. We use that task importer to upload all of these VAVs on here, and our checklist is a little bit different, but same idea. We just have these different steps and things that need to be completed for each VAV, and you can go through and complete them and check them off, and then it ends with the QA/QC completed here. We also have a related task here with a conflict with framing. So this one was moved to a constraint, and it's now assigned to the framing category. And I'll kind of show you how we can actually get this out to the framing sub to let them know that they're holding us up. So if you can kind of see, I'll exit out of that and just go back here. But this kind of gives you an idea of what this can look like for a more subcontractor workflow. And we have all of our constraints here on the left. So in order to get this information out to those different subs, what we can do is generate a report. So I'll just click generate report right here. And then we have all of our different templates that have been created. The key one here is constraint report. So this is one that I'm going to open up here. And this is kind of all the different details that we can include within it. So in our case, we have our summary, detailed CSV, but we're going to choose the detailed report. And then just some key things to include here. We definitely want to make sure we have our created and verified date, start and end date, related tasks, checklists, messages, and photos. And then you can include whatever else makes sense for you guys' workflow. But those are definitely the things that I want to include. And then the reason that we have that status set up as its own constraint status is that way we can filter out using that. So we're going to filter this for just the constraints, and then we're still going to include all the different categories. And then we can choose a couple other things here. These are up to you to kind of configure as you wish. And then the last thing that's pretty important is just when we want to schedule this report to be sent out. So I can send this either immediately, I can send this weekly and have it be sent on each day if I wanted, or I can send it to be just sent out a couple days of the week, or I can also send it or schedule for it to be sent monthly. So I would just go ahead and click save there, and then that's going to be configured, and then I'll just go through what that kind of looks like. So this is what the report will look like when you send this. So likely if you're a sub, you'll want to send this out to the GC, and then they can notify the different parties of work that's impacting you. And that table of contents will kind of just show you the different breakdowns of what that looks like. So we have our electrical, framing, plumbing, different subtrades that are impacting us. And then if we keep scrolling down, we have the actual content and details of that report and the actual work that needs to be completed for us. So yeah, that kind of just gives you a quick rundown on how you can make this work as a subcontractor and a GC. This is, again, is an introductory session. We'll also be having an advanced session in a couple weeks, but just kind of want to get you guys set up and understanding the different ways that you can use Fieldwire for QA/QC. So with that, we'll dive into the Q&A portion, and I'll hand it back to Melissa here. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to enter them into the Q&A bar. And yeah, I'll go ahead and hand it back to Melissa.
Thank you, Dylan. So now it's time for questions. I don't see any coming up right now, so we do have 5 minutes. So feel free to throw those in the chat and we can answer as best as we can. So Dylan, I do have a question. Is there a good way to schedule QA/QC work?
Yeah, so a good way to kind of plan this out. So if you're going to look at this from the web version, a good way, if you have those dates entered in, is to, let's see, if we go to our tasks here and then we go to the calendar view, we can actually kind of like plan this out and know what's coming up, either by the month or by the week, or by the day. So if we click on the day here, we can see that we have these inspections or these QA/QC inspections that we need to complete, and so you can kind of plan accordingly for that day.
Okay, now we have another question. Do you use job numbers to track individual jobs?
Yeah, so when setting up a project, you can add a project code. So if I go back to my home screen here and then I do a new project, you can either do a job number as part of the project name, or you can also add a project code in there as your job number. Hopefully that answers that question. Any other questions, Melissa?
Yes, so we have another question. Our project is considering using Fieldwire as a tracking method. We have no tasks or columns set up. How should we start?
That is a great question, and I think it'd be helpful if we probably have somebody follow up with you on that. But it's going to be, so if I go back into our demo project here, there's going to be a standard kind of template that will auto-populate with your different priorities. But I definitely I found like a similar workflow to something like this to be pretty helpful, where you have something active, planned, or delayed. The other one that we were looking at here is the open or in progress, and then having, again, for both of those, having a QA/QC punch portion of it, and then I completed and verified. But usually something along these lines, where you have that open and in progress, and then some sort of constraint that's like holding you up, and then a QA/QC portion and completed. But again, fully customizable, but that definitely is a good place to start. And I think has been very helpful to a lot of different subs and GCs.
All right,
But we'll
and then one.
Sorry, go ahead, Melissa.
Yeah, definitely follow up as well. One last question. Explain how you gather the coordinates to import tasks.
Ooh, great question. Okay, so we can also follow up with you on this, but there's on our website, you can download a sheet, and I think it comes in a couple different sizes based on your plans that you can overlay. So if I'll kind of show you real quick, but what you would do is upload that sheet onto Fieldwire and then do this compare feature. and then you would compare that sheet with whatever sheet you're looking to get those coordinates on, and then hit compare, and then you would get those coordinates to show up on there.
Awesome. Thank you, Dylan. And yes, any questions that we didn't get through in today's presentation, we will be reaching out via email to answer those and follow up with some articles. You'll also be receiving a copy of this recording and slide deck. But thank you all for joining. We really appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.